the first 3 months that I was at Serhant, I would spend, not over exaggerating, like 8 to 10 hours a day cold calling.
How'd you land that $70 million listing?
So that was basically a few years in the making. So
Jack, you're in your 20s, total career sales over 200 million now, over 100 million in active listings. And then on top of that, you manage over 651 rentals.
I think the main thing that people overlook with those properties is you're borderline not marketing to them. The people who can afford a $70 million fifth home is maybe 1,000 people in the world. You can put it in the Wall Street Journal. You can put it all over social media. Those people have 2 to 3 representatives. And if you really want to get it to the right people, it's less broad scale marketing and more of like throwing the dart. There are plenty of times where I have gotten calls at 5:30 in the morning, my head getting ripped off. And I'm like, okay, understood. We're going to fix it. I say to any new brokers I talk to or any junior agents, I'm like, you better find a way to navigate people screaming at you. And there are some brokers I talk to, they're like, I don't tolerate that. Well, you just lost a huge population of buyers or sellers. I think I had like $22 million worth of deals fall through in 48 hours. I was just like, oh my God, if this just keeps happening, I'm gonna look like a fool. This only works if you make it to the top. There is no other option, otherwise you look like you made a dumb decision.
Jack, you're in your 20s, total career sales over 200 million now, and over 100 million in active listings. And then on top of that, you manage over 651 rentals. But I was curious, how'd you land that $70 million listing?
So that was basically a few years in the making. So when I was at my previous brokerage, I had gotten connected with that developer and we were kind of just helping them. I'm more of like a back end front, dealing with, some of their smaller deals, helping them with some of their rentals. And then when I came to Serhant, we kind of had the opportunity. The property had been listed previously with 2 other brokerages. And then they came to us and they were like, hey, are you guys willing to take on this listing? And we work with a couple other firms on it, but it's such a big listing that even a small piece of that pie is a very nice piece of the pie, if you will. So really what it was is it was probably like 4 or 5 years worth of relationship building and started really small scale. And then what we did to kind of land that is we were just really consistent with them. So anytime they asked us to, even if it was just do a favor, we did them a favor. But if they gave us an opportunity, we always came through and closed it. And then when they built this beautiful, waterfront compound right on the ocean, beautiful, modern. And they said, like, listen, we're looking for a couple people to give an opportunity to. We were like, we would love the opportunity to jump in and have a piece of the pie and get in and work on it. And I think because of the previous work we had shown we were willing to do even on smaller level things, they were like, okay, we'll give you guys we'll give you an opportunity. Because at that time, when we first got that listing, the firm was only, a year into the Hamptons. So I think there were a few people that, we heard rumblings of people a little frustrated that we were one of the groups that got an opportunity there. But I think it was really just the benefit of, what I would consider 4.5 years of being a man of my word and actually coming through time after time. Those listings, you don't really just stumble on them.
Yeah.
They're usually years worth of work. And that's why, like, when you see those big deals in the paper, a $50 million sale, a $100 million sale, it's that person didn't just fall into that person's lap 90% of the time. Occasionally they do, but for the most part, it's years worth of work. Sometimes those properties are off market shopped for many, many years before they actually sell.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the case in that situation in particular.
So you kind of started the relationship as like a rental situation? Really,
yeah. That's really how it started. It started on a rental front, which you'll notice, the longer we talk, is like a reoccurring theme with a lot of my business. Started on the rental side and then doing some smaller to larger rentals with them. Then it started with, the $5 to $10 million projects. And then it started to kind of snowball into, hey, we have a $20 million listing coming up. Hey, we have a 3 sublot division where each property is going to be 5 to 10 million. To then, what I guess you'd call the whale, which is, a $70 million modern waterfront.
Yeah.
Right on the ocean in Bridgehampton. It's, to me, like that's really, peak real estate in the Hamptons is oceanfront in the estate sections. I think I think when people think of Hamptons real estate and they really fantasize about it, they're thinking of the estate sections of the Hamptons. where you have these massive compounds that are, any room in the house, you're looking over the ocean. And to me, that house is one of those.
Yeah. And most people look at that and they're like, I want to sell like something that big, 10, 20, 50, 100 million. Like, what do most, like, for example, someone like me, what would I not understand what it takes to really market and sell like a listing like that and the work behind the work?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think the main thing that people overlook with those properties is your buyer pool. You're marketing to them entirely differently because you're borderline not marketing to them because the people who can afford a $70 million fifth home is, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people in the world, if that. And when you're looking for those people, listen, you can put it in the Wall Street Journal. You can put it all over social media. You can make sure it's on Zillow, all those major platforms. But for the most part, those people have 2 to 3 representatives handling everything for them. And if you really want to get it to the right people, it's less broad scale marketing and more of like throwing the dart at the right. You're really aiming for the bullseye when you're marketing with those. So it's a lot more, in my opinion, direct outreach. So that's a little bit more boots on the ground marketing. You have to know the right people. You're reaching out to the right wealth managers, the right attorneys, the right family offices, because you're going to the people that handle the money for those people. You're not 90%, you're not just picking up the phone and calling Jeff Bezos. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But you might be able to get a hold of one of his representatives. So in my opinion, the biggest difference between somebody marketing, a $5 million house in the Hamptons and a $50 to $100 million house, it's really the marketing approach. It's less of this really broad net. We do that, of course.
Yeah.
But I think the most efficiency and where I think you see a lot of the deals come from is a lot more private chains, a lot more direct communication. The visibility is what I think helps open the door for those conversations. But when you're selling, a $70 million house, you're not just throwing it on Zillow and hoping for the best. Yeah. You're doing a lot of direct outreach to the right people.
How do you get them to like open the email, reply, open the door? Because they're getting, I'm sure, bombarded. So it's like you have to open the door the right way.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. One is, the initial blunt answer, which Ryan says to us relentlessly, is just follow up. He had a client in 2015 that he had to follow up with for, I think it was 7 or 8 years before the client actually started to work with him. And then within a year, he closed, I think, $100 million worth of real estate with him. So the initial thing is consistent follow-up, but 2, professionalism. I think in this new age of brokering, you see a lot of people who are doing things just to get visibility and not always the best way. So I think making sure you're streamlining with professionalism is really, really important pending the type of clientele you're talking to. Like our market, for example, compared to, the Hamptons, compared to New York City, especially Florida, we're a very, very old school, very traditional market. Paper marketing, signs in front of houses, dressing well, showing up. If you're doing a showing, you're showing up in well-dressed, loafer. A casual day, maybe a golf polo, but how you present yourself, those old school values are still very prevalent in our market. And that type of clientele wants that. And I think in your style of marketing, that's also important. And when you're doing your outreach to them, that's also important. Hey, here's why I'm reaching out to you. I think this is a great opportunity for you. Here's why. Here's the value props of this property. Not sending them a super colorful, big blast, paintball style, where you're just like, hey, please, for the love of God, look at this. It's more like, hey, listen, I'm going to keep sending this until at least somebody gets back to me. If you don't want to, just tell me no, and I won't follow up with you. I'll respect your wish. But until somebody acknowledges, I'm going to keep going with you. And again, value prop. Everyone in the Hamptons is looking for value proposition. Because again, we're not a primary market. So most of the people who are coming to us, it either needs to be something that's going to appreciate, hold value, which traditionally speaking, the Hamptons always has. 1, it's always gone up in value. 2, I think in the last 25, 30 years, the only time the market's ever gone down was really just a slight plateau in 07, 08. And within 6 months, it was back scaling and appreciating again. So it's always like value first, and then 2, peaceful enjoyment. 90% of our people are coming to us to escape something. The irony is the higher the price point, the less they use it. Usually it's really funny. Once you get over like 15 or 20 million, the amount of times they actually use the properties drastically goes down.
That's kind of like a funny set.
It's funny if you think about it, but if you think about
sense.
it makes sense because if you have enough capital to buy a $20+ million third, fourth, fifth, eighth home, you'll probably have the ability to go wherever you want, whenever you want. You most likely have a private jet. So these massive compounds are frequently empty, and they're just being maintained, one, to protect their structural support, to protect their visibility, but also just to keep the actual structure itself in good condition. But as far as like actual wear and tear on these homes, I can tell you how many homes I go into that are, 5 to 10 years old, and they look like, and the floors are usually the biggest giveaway, they look like they have barely been walked on. And I think it's amazing. Yeah. It's funny. And then on the flip side, you do have plenty of homes that are frequently used. But when you think about how much money is being spent on some of these houses and the fact that they're maybe used, 10 to 15 times a year is comical.
Yeah. It's more of an asset at that point. And
that's exactly what it is. And that's, I think, Hamptons real estate. The beautiful thing about our market is properties have always been a tremendous asset. We have some of the lowest taxes in the state of New York, which is ironic given how much water frontage there is. The values have almost never gone down. I think when you look at a market like Florida, there's a lot more risk there. Insurance costs are going through the roof. There's a lot more risk as far as natural disasters there. Knock on wood, they never have to deal with it. And again, but everyone knows they will.
Yeah.
And it's a market where there's so much development. And I can't think of the last time I went down to Florida and there wasn't some sort of very large scale development happening. Whereas like in our market, you can't build over 3 stories. We're essentially almost out of land already. So your asset is going to go up whether buyers like it or not, because there's no land, especially in the AAA locations. There's some agricultural and some old farms that can still be divvied up, but they're not on the ocean. They're not walking distance to the water. So, as far as the actual land value, it's just going to keep going up because people love to park money in the Hamptons. And we're so close to New York City that it's always going to be the easiest place to vacation for people in the city. It's one of the only places that's a great vacation destination that you can just drive to within 2.5, 3 hours.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So Ravi mentioned like you had to meet Jack because he's building something unique and built it a lot differently. And when I talked to someone else, they said high-end rentals are a really good opportunity because what happens in the long run.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that and how you kind of built it?
No, absolutely. That's literally how I built my entire business. So when I started with Serhant, this was 2022. We didn't even have an office when I started with Ryan. So I came over in January of 22, and we were still in the process of building the office, which opened, I believe it was May or June of 2022. And we had no listings. We had no brokers. But we were as raw as it gets, a true startup feel in a very old school location where most of the competition, they had been there for 10, 15, 20, 40 years. I'd say the average broker I compete with is probably 55, and they've lived in the Hamptons for 30 plus years. So for us to get a foothold, my mentality was the quickest and best way to do it is through the rental market. We can't just start knocking on doors and saying, hey, I'd like to pitch you on your $10 million listing. But the quickest, easiest entry into the Hamptons is through the rental market. So what I did is the first 3 months that I was at Serhant, I would spend, not over exaggerating, you can ask anyone that knows me, like 8 to 10 hours a day, cold calling, doing outreach to rentals, open rentals, exclusive rentals, trying to build up as big of a Rolodex on the rental side as possible. Because one, the rental market in the Hamptons is great. For 3 months, they probably take in the amount of money that the average New York City place takes in 12 months on a percentage basis. Yeah. So it's low wear and tear on their home. They only have to rent it for 3 months to capitalize. And even now it's, really only 2 months, July through Labor Day. And it's a really, really great way to, one, showcase your abilities, and two, earn the trust of the owners. So for me, what I did is, in 3 months, I think the first 3 months, we probably built up like 350 rental portfolio of houses that we were overseeing. And, we were really happy with it, but there are thousands So we oversee 650 now. But my goal is for us to be over 1,000. And my goal, ideally, I'd like that by the end of the year. And I drive my team crazy, but every time we have a team meeting, I'm like, how many open rentals did you add? How many open rental relationships? Because the average renter probably rents for 3 to 5 years before they start to have that inclination about being a buyer. Because year after year, they're spending $100, $200, $300,000 to rent someone else's home for the summer. When for a lot of them, like, I'd rather just for 3 to 5 years carry it in my own home, sell it for an appreciated value, or I'll rent my house when I don't want to use it. And this way you can use it, because in my opinion, as somebody who's there year round, the best time to be in the Hamptons is May, June, September, October. July and August are incredible for summer visitors. If you're there full time, you can't beat the weather in the beginning and the end of the summer, and every restaurant's open.
Yeah.
So it's great for people who own, because they can rent. You know, a $3 million house you can rent for some of these properties are getting, you know, $250,000 if they're in the right location. Or, you know, I'd say like a little bit more accurate would probably be like a $6 million house can rent for, you know, anywhere from $200,000 to $350,000 for the summer. And they can still use their home when it's nice out.
The rest of the year, yeah.
The rest of the year, they can still have access to it. And they can just drive there whenever they want. So my mentality when I was scaling it was, okay, let's get as many rental clients as we can. Let's show them what Serhant's capable of. I'll show them what I'm capable of. You know, my professionalism, my structure, how organized I am. You know, a big thing is just being available when they need you. So I don't care if it's a $15 million buyer or a $50,000 renter. If they call me at 11 p.m., I pick up the phone. And a lot of those renters and landlords have become, for myself and my team, buyers and sellers. And it's a great way to create recurring business. Because the thing is, there are so many rentals in the Hamptons that not a lot of brokers put a lot of energy in or effort into them. Because a lot of brokers will tell you they feel like it's a lot of work for not a lot of money. I'm all about volume. So if to one broker they feel like it's not enough coin in their pocket, okay, what if I do 100 of them?
651.
Is that enough money to you?
Yeah.
And I think the root of it is laziness. But for us, it's been wonderful, and it's allowed us in 3 years to not only help the company get its foundation, become, you know, I think the 3rd largest rental portfolio, and then third, it's allowed us to break into the top luxury markets within 3 years. And I genuinely believe that if we didn't start and, you know, grassroot it through the rentals, that's a 10-year process. Or it's a lot of inconsistency. You know, it's 1 year where you're great, 1 year where you're bad. And in a secondary market where there's already a lot of volatility in the market you're in, which is, you know, real estate, but then you mix in the fact that we're not a primary market. Yeah. Nobody's leaving Manhattan to put their kids into many schools in the Hamptons, to be blunt. So there's the risk of volatility, and the best way, in my opinion, to mediate that is through the rental foundation.
Makes
because
sense.
People are bad market, good market. Like, for example, this was a bad rental market this year. You know, I think you might have seen on CNBC, it was down, I think 30% this year. We still did, I think 111 rentals in the last 2 months. And the beauty is, whether they rented our client's house or we got them to another client's house, that's a deal. Everyone's a deal. So if we get an inquiry and they don't take our client's house, okay, we'll put them in something else. And, you know, the market was, I think the report said it was down 30% this year.
Yeah.
We still got, I think it was like 87% of our properties rented. And the ones that didn't, to be completely honest with you, and I say it to them too, it's because they chose not to. We brought them offers and we said, listen, this will probably be the strongest offer we have this year. And they're like, to me, it's not worth it. That's totally fine. As long as I get them solid offers in front of them, they have the option to decide. But to me, that's our job. Is just make sure we're getting them strong offers in front. And if they feel, you know, listen, this year we're not getting the offers we want, the beauty is now you just have a summer Hamptons home that you can use. Yeah. So they're never really unhappy, if you will, which is the other beauty of dealing with them on the rental side. But yeah, so it's the long-winded way of saying I've made a really big rental portfolio. It's how I got all my local connections. It's how I built all my initial relationships. And those people are what really helped me grow a really quick web. And I think it's probably, to Ravi's point, very different than what I hear a lot of, even out east or in the city, how I hear a lot of, because a lot of brokers don't want to deal with rentals.
Yeah.
They think it's tedious. They find it to be,
Especially in like the city and stuff too.
I will say, even as somebody who absolutely loves rentals, I don't know if I'd be able to do tenant representation in the city. It is, I don't know if Ravi touched on it.
No, not really.
It's so competitive. And there's no tenant loyalty. Because these apartments come and go so quickly. They'll work with you for like an hour. And then next thing you know, they're just showing up to something on their own, which it happens in our market as well, but people are a little bit more loyal. Like if you show them you're putting in the effort, and most importantly, you show them the regional knowledge and that you are a value add to them, they'll just stick with you. I have rental clients that I've worked with for 5, 6, 7 years now. And it's like clockwork. Half the time I say to them, beginning of every year, I'm like, let me know when you're ready and I'll get you in something right away. And like clockwork, they'll reach out to me. They'll text me, I'm ready. I have so many clients that literally just text me, I'm ready, period. And then I'll start sending them, because I remember what everybody likes. So I'll send them all the top 5 to 10 options. And when you have enough rapport with those people and they know that you know what they like, you've put them in places they've loved before, you can just send them the top 5 options. They'll make a call on the spot and you'll rent it without even having to show it to them.
So managing like 650 rentals, growing that in 3 years, a lot of times when you scale, there's a lot of pain and growth pains.
Oh, yeah.
Like what do you have to learn throughout that process?
I'd say I kind of have like a 2-sided answer. One side was like for myself, learning like client facing, which is just being mindful of when you have that many clients, a lot of times you can't waste any time.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, it became like adjusting, even like my personal schedule. So like I adjusted my sleep schedule. I adjusted when I was exercising, because I initially had always been a really late night guy and then a little bit of a later riser. But then I realized, I would wake up, even if you wake up at 7, I'd already have 75 emails. So I kind of switched it to where I noticed not a lot of people were bothering or like reaching out to me after, let's say 10:30, 11. So for me, it was, adjusting my entire life around what time my clientele was available. So I started doing like much earlier mornings, getting all my emails out to everybody before they're up and moving. So that kind of knocked out like, I don't know, 40% of my communication, because everybody's hearing from me before they wake up. So they have all their updates.
Nice.
Which kind of knocks down a big level of calls you need to take on. And then on the other side, it was like team scaling. The short answer is one person cannot service 700 properties. It would be, if somebody is, and somebody's out there and you are, God bless you. But I just genuinely, it's just not possible, especially in our market. It might be one thing if you're in a city or you're just servicing like a building. Like if you're doing new dev in the city and your whole job is just to sell one building, then I get it. You're literally in one building. For us, it can take easily 30 minutes to, if you would need to go from Southampton to Montauk in the summer, 2 hours. God bless you. Like you're not going to make it there and back without a 4-hour turnaround. So for me, it was scaling. But it was doing it at the right time. I think a lot of people start teams for the wrong reasons. I think a lot of people just start teams to just grab business from them. My mentality was I was only willing to start a team if I needed help and I had enough business to give to those people on my team. So it was, I think, the end of 2022, the latter part of 22, when I realized like, servicing 400 rentals and handling all my sales is going to be really tough. So I was like, now I feel like it's appropriate to start working. So I started, at that point, I added 2 people to my team. I started my team, brought on 2 people, and they were great. They helped me a ton. They were awesome with the rentals. And then as it scaled more, we realized, so 3 people can't cover 500 properties. And then we realized, we got to a point where we just needed to match the amount of people to the amount of clientele.
Yeah.
And we kind of found that the bandwidth on the rental side was like 100 rental properties per person.
Per person.
That's, I think that's a fair number.
Yeah.
Because listen, you're not doing something with every client every single day. But if you're consistent with, like what I like, I'm very, very, very organized. Like I like everything on Excel sheets, and I like our follow-ups at the same time every week. So Mondays for us are all update. It's heavily focused on every client gets an update on Mondays. If you're a landlord, you get updates on inquiries, any marketing changes we did, email response rate, if we had showings, what the showing feedback was, and then just our general market feedback and client feedback. And then sometimes we'll do additional broker feedback. On the seller side, very similar, but it's a little bit more just market centric to the sale market.
Yeah.
Anything like any rate changes, anything that's, any information going around just in the New York real estate market. But for my team, if you are on a listing every Monday, your main focus and your main goal is to update every client you're actively servicing. Because when I think it from the other side, like on my end, if I'm the client, and I think of it like how like my financial advisor is, he is proactive enough. I never have to reach out to him. I get my updates before I have to reach out, so I never bother him. I don't think I've initiated a conversation with that guy in 3 years, because anytime I would need an update, he gives it to me before I ask. So my mentality, and I love that. And my clients are busier than me, if not just as busy. Doing their own thing, leading companies, creating companies. We have clients who run some of the biggest hedge funds in the world. They don't have time to ask me, nor should they. Because my job is to streamline everything about their real estate. Everything about their real estate portfolio, at least in the Hamptons, if not all of New York. We are brokers, but we should act as advisors to a certain extent. So that's our mentality. So like training that into the team had growing pains. Training myself to do it had growing pains. It was a lot of trial and error, which I think a lot of team leaders can attest to. But listen, there were a lot of growing pains. There were some things that I would try and I'm like, oh, that was very bad. We're not going to do that anymore. And then there were other times where we do something and like the Monday updates, we were like, wow, this has really freed up a lot of time, because no one was calling us for updates anymore. Some people still would, but on Mondays, they knew they were getting an update from us.
Usually like when you find something in the business, like the Monday updates or something, sometimes it comes out of like need, because you're like, you go through something so much, you're like, okay, we just have to like figure something out, solve it. So did you have like any painful moment or anything that kind of like sparked some of that change?
Yeah, I totally did. What actually sparked the Monday updates was it was the end of 2022. My rental portfolio had been the biggest it had ever been. And I had also brought on, I was working with, at that point in time, I think it was like 22 buyers. And I think it was like 13 sale listings. And again, we're at a much higher price point. Like I know you've probably spoken to some people who they'll sell like 1,500 houses a year. But pending your price point, there are different levels of expectation.
Yeah.
And different turnaround time. Like the average sale price point I do right now is probably around around 7 million. And again, that's really the average. We do some in the teens, some in the 20s, occasionally some in the 30s, if not more. And then a lot in like the 1 to 3.5 range, kind of just open to doing anything. Like I say, we never scoff at $1. That's like my team motto. Nice. I don't care if you get a baby rental or you get $120 million lead. We never say no to anything unless what they're looking for doesn't exist, in which case we communicate it, establish a new expectation and go from there. But it was that end of 2022. And I had some clients who were saying to me like, listen, the reason I worked with you is because of how diligent and how organized you were. Like in your pitch, you said X, Y, and Z, and you were great up until this point. So what I realized is like me backing up my word and what my promise to my clients was slipping. And they were starting to get mad at me, and rightfully so. So it was at that point in time that I was, okay, let's not be greedy about trying to hold on to every dollar. The bigger we make the pie, it doesn't matter how many pieces we give out. And that's been my mentality as I've scaled the team, is if you work with me, you're always going to be working with me on different projects. I never put multiple people on one project because I want to make sure everyone's getting paid handsomely. Yeah. Like I want it to be worth my team members' time, because like I am also a genuine believer, like as a team leader, you're also responsible for how much those people make. I think a lot of team leaders are like, no, it's on them. I'm here. They can work off of me. I'm a very big proponent of servant leadership, which is like you serve them and in return they help you. And listen, some people take advantage of it, but that's also growing pains.
But that's a good way to think about it. It's like you're ultimately the person who's helping that person grow. So it's like if they're not making enough, it does fall a little bit on both sides. But
I think it's a two-sided coin. You know, a lot of people say, oh, you can lead a horse to water. I think a lot of leaders don't lead the horse to water. I think they hire someone and they're just like where's my money? Where's the money I'm making off of you? And, you know, I've had several people working with me now, people have worked for me in the past who they came from another team. And, you know, they came from working under wonderful, like phenomenal brokers, but they didn't know anything. And I was like, what happened? And they're like, well, I joined the team and they never trained me. Yeah. You know, you can't expect people to just know how to do real estate. I see both sides because there are a lot of more experienced people in the space who are like, if somebody won't teach themselves, then they won't make it. I don't believe in that. I do believe there's a certain level of, you know, self-accountability where, you know, don't ask me a simple question if you haven't Googled it yet. Or if there's something that's not going to affect a deal, try and research it on your own and then come to me with like your final synopsis and we'll go from there. You know, it's like don't call me if you're asking me how to open the website. That's a waste of everyone's time and you're just not trying. But if you have a technical question about local law, local code, if you need a connection to a builder or a referral, if you have a legal question, I'm here all day. If you call me at 5 a.m., if you call me at 11 p.m., I will pick up and we will work it out. And the other thing is just being, you know, it's easier. So then again, like I'm not married with kids. So I'm sure if I had 3 kids, it would be a lot harder. But something I talk to a lot of clients about, which I genuinely think is a strength, is my only priority right now is my job. There are a lot of phenomenal brokers who have kids and like they might have to go to, you know, go watch the game. They got to go to, you know, the summer school performance or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like they have to go to the holiday show. Like I don't have those things. So I'm always available. And I think it's a tremendous asset, you know, because one of the challenges that I think you might have heard from young people already, or people, especially like in a market like mine where the average age is much older on the broker community side. It's like flipping it into a value add, which I think it is. I think being a younger person in the Hamptons is a phenomenal asset because I have access to everything that, you know, if a 75-year-old broker has access to. The only difference is I have a lot more energy. I'm a lot more available. And I think my fire, if you will, is burning a lot hotter.
Yeah. Something like Ravi talked about was like, especially when you're dealing with like the ultra high net worth, it's like scaling the communication has been probably the hardest struggle, trying to like navigate that.
Yeah. It's like a whole different ballgame.
Because they want your time.
He's spot on. The higher the price point, the more they expect from you because they know your return on them is much higher. So the interesting thing about real estate, which I think Ryan navigates so well, I think Ravi does it really well, is we're never guaranteed. So what I joke about, like with the attorneys I work with and the inspectors I work with and the lenders and the title, everyone here gets paid if the deal doesn't close, except me. So, you know, when we talk to some of these clients, it's a sensitive topic, if you will, because, you know, I've had clients say to me all the time, well, if you sell my house, your commission off of me is going to be $750,000. I'm like, you're 100% right. You nailed that. We have to sell the house, and I need you to trust my process and trust my communication. I'm always willing to work alongside whatever communication style people like. I have some clients, they only like phone calls. I have other clients that they're like, don't call me. Like I'm way too busy. I don't have time to talk to you. Those clients traditionally are the easiest. But to Ravi's point, you know, as you get into those higher price points, if they had it their way, you would be only at their house 24 hours. You would live there.
And it's like, there's the two sides of that. It's like they want someone who is successful and going to get the job done. But then if they're successful, you're busy too. So it's
exactly.
like navigating
What
that.
makes you great is the same reason that multiple people work with you. But I think it's all about just proactively communicating it. Like something I do when I pitch houses is I actually discuss my availability, my style of communication, and my accessibility in the pitch.
Nice.
It just makes it a lot easier because it's like
Setting the expectation.
it's setting expectations before they even agree to work with you.
Yeah.
Because now they know, oh, this is how he communicates. This is how he works. So he's not disappearing on me. He told me this day one. He told me this pre-day one. And I found that was the biggest difference maker. Just early, proactive establishing of communications and expectations. But that was a learned through pain situation. Because the first few times I had 8-figure listings, I didn't talk about those things. After we got the listing, I was like, okay, so we do Monday updates. And like, well, what if I feel like we should speak on the phone a few times a week? I'm like, okay, that's fine. But then as you scale, you're like, well, if I'm talking to every person a few times a week,
it becomes a lot.
900 clients, I don't think I can talk to all of you a few times a week. I won't have time. So listen, higher price points are going to have a different style of communication. They also have a different style of just the approach to showings, like pre-qualifying different clients. Because when you get into that 15, 20 plus $1 million price point, you're not really doing open houses because people who don't have the capital to buy the house will just show up to look in these, walk through these homes that are tremendous assets. And, you always just have to be mindful of screening. You have to screen as far as doing your research to make sure, qualifications. A lot of times, you'll make sure that people are pre-approved, pre-qualified. Because there are, we have had cases where people who literally lie about who they are come to these houses. And that's why we do research, because somebody walks in, they don't look anything like the person they said they are. Now, all of a sudden, like, why are you in this house? Like, what are you doing here?
Was there sounds like there's
I actually had that happen one time. Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I had a listing. It was in East Hampton, brand new construction. And this client was insisting on coming really late at night. And I'm very accommodating. So I was like, yeah, I'll meet you later. That's totally fine. I just asked, you have to register every buyer because that's your job. So he would not give me his name up until, and I eventually said, I'm like, listen, if you don't register, I can't let you in the house. It's just for the safety of the home. Finally gives me his name, do some quick research. Listen, there are 100 people with 100 different names.
Yeah.
Or 100 of the same name. But did some research. He told me a little bit more about himself. Fast forward, we get to the appointment. He's clearly not the person he said he is. We're walking through the house and he keeps asking me if I mind if he just hangs out in the room alone. And I'm like, no, you can't come. You can't just hang out in the room, because this house was fully staged. And it had $500,000 worth of furniture in it. But not only just furniture, but tchotchkes, vases, very expensive things. Fast forward, I spoke to a few different brokers. This same guy was going around trying to steal things out of houses. Yeah. Because he had this big jacket on, and apparently he was literally just putting it in the jacket. Fortunately, he didn't steal anything from my client.
That's good.
But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then on the flip side with those higher level properties, I had a buyer. There are some properties sometimes you need proof of funds to show. And I had a buyer who I had gotten connected with. I was working with him, and to get access to this $25 million house, I needed his proof of funds. And anytime I asked him for proof of funds, he would send me a super blurry. It almost looked like he was holding the paper and would shake the camera. And it was always a small snippet of a pay stub. And I would send it over because that's all I had. And the sales side was like, that's not going to work. We need a full formal pay stub. And he called me one day screaming at me, telling me that he buys $20 to $50 million properties every month on his black Amex. He very well could be. But I had to say to him, I'm like, they won't let us in the house without proof of funds. That is just a seller's situation. That's what they've established. proceeded to belligerently scream at me for 30 minutes, say some really not nice things to me. And then come to find out, I talked to another broker. He did the same thing to him. And it turns out it was literally just a random guy who was using a bunch of fake numbers just to like send these brokers on wild goose chases.
That's crazy.
It's insane. And apparently it's more common than you would think. But that was my first time dealing with it. And I was like, this can't be. I had a veteran broker say to me, he's like, it's probably a fake buyer. I'm like, I don't think so. I'm like, yeah, he seems somewhat legit. And then no more than 7 days later, I was like, yeah, he definitely is not a real buyer. I'm like, this guy's wasting everyone's time.
Yeah, it's just insane.
I'm like, it's just a lunatic who wants to just, I guess, pretend to be Gatsby. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like live up this life. And
yeah, literally.
And another thing was, like, we talked about how, like, especially being like an agent, but then also being an agent dealing with like ultra high net worth, like having the ability to like control your emotions and like not react is a huge thing. It's
a huge thing. And that's a really, really great point. I think it's something we don't talk about enough directly, but you have to be, I don't believe in highs and lows. It's like what I say to my team is, I don't care if you do the biggest deal of your life or you just have the biggest deal of your life fall through. We are always this. I don't care if somebody hugs you and tells you you're beautiful or screams at you and tells you to get hit by a bus. We are always this. Because there's so much volatility, not only emotionally, but just fiscally in our job, that if you ride that wave, you'll burn yourself out so quickly.
You'll go crazy. Yeah.
You will literally go insane. And I consider myself very fortunate that, I played sports in college. I played sports all my life. And, I had a background where, I played for some very intense coaches and I had some very intense parents. So, and then my first job was very intense. So I say to any new brokers I talk to or any junior agents, I'm like, you better find a way to navigate people screaming at you, people sharing disappointment with you. I don't care how unrealistic or realistic their expectations are. We are always this. Because there are plenty of times where I've woken up I have gotten calls at 5:30 in the morning, my head getting ripped off. And I'm like, okay, understood. Yep, we're going to fix it. Totally understand. And there are some brokers I talk to, they're like, I don't tolerate that. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, you just lost a huge population of buyers or a huge population of sellers. I'll tolerate it. Yeah. Because that's my job. Is to also navigate and help them navigate their own emotions. And I think, again, a lot of it just comes down to communication. Because sometimes that screaming match it has nothing to do with the broker.
Yeah, something else going on.
Something else is going on, and you're taking the brunt of it because you're the easiest person to, because you don't have leverage over the clients. But yeah, it's I smiled when you said it because it's something I do think about a lot. Like I consider myself like business wise like pretty emotionless, which I take a lot of pride in. Yeah, like I just closed a deal last week for $13 million. And when I was with Ryan the day I put it in contract, and him and I were driving around the Hamptons, and I put it in contract while him and I are actually in the car, and he got notified through the accounting side. And he was like, did you just put a property in contract? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, that's a pretty big one. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, but it's not done until it's closed. So we just keep moving forward. And I just genuinely feel that way. Because when I first started in real estate in general, I got myself getting a little caught up, like almost like counting the money before it was closed. And then when deals fall through, when you do that, it just breaks your heart. Yeah. So like I say, I have a rule with my team too. We don't count we don't even look at what the commission number is until we are literally getting ready to prep the closing commission bill. That's when you can look at it. Because to me, there's so much that happens between the contract period to the closing that the deal can fall through. Mm-hmm. So why are we counting dollars that don't exist yet? All you're going to do is either get yourself too excited or too disappointed. So it's, and then on the client side, it's, I think kind of what I already said, it's really just reminding yourself of where the frustration comes from. Is it fear? Is it stress? Many times it's fear, especially on the developer side. I think one thing, Ryan and I actually just talked about this last week. I love development. I would also love, someday in the near future to work on the development side of real estate as well, but always be a broker. And I said, I'm like, would you ever get into it? He's like, no. He's like, it's way too risky for me. And it was a good little light bulb reminder for me how much financial stress our developers take on. These guys are taking out short-term hard money loans for millions and millions of dollars with an 18, 24-month balloon. And if 1 to 2 things go wrong, the town holds them up for 6 months.
They have to find another way for more money.
They have to find another way to get more money.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes brokers are so blind to that. And they're like, oh, this guy's an asshole. This guy is a jerk. Maybe. Or maybe he feels like you could be putting in some more effort because he's right now leveraged $6 million. And I don't think he's got it sitting in his savings account. So he needs you to just really put an extra foot forward. And I think when you start to shift the way you think about, anger and frustration projected at us, it really changes the way you receive it. Yeah. Because it's one thing to be like, this guy sucks. This guy's an asshole. Okay. That's going to burn you out pretty quick. But at any time somebody comes to you, you go, okay, oh, well, this client, she's widowed. She doesn't have her kids out here. She's alone taking care of this big property. This is going to be her retirement money. She's stressed. Okay, I'm here for that. This guy has a $7 million loan out. This project was supposed to be finished 6 months ago. He's still 3 months out from completion. And he owes that bank $4 million in 5 months. Okay, that's where that's coming from. The buy side's a little different. Buy side, you're like, all right, maybe he's a little unrealistic, or
a little different,
or maybe he's a little feisty. But what I love about a fiery buyer is that means they're serious. I'll take an intense buyer any day of the week. You want to call me and screw me? Awesome. I know you want it. Let's go find something. Rather than the buyer who I'm like, hey, it's been 9 days. Are you still here? Do you still want to buy something? I just think there's so much internal mental warfare we have with ourselves as brokers, just in sales in general.
Yeah.
I found it very grounding to take a step back and just look at what the root of all these things are. Because I'm sure you deal with it when you sit across from people. Like, where's this person coming from? I'm sure you do your research. Like, I know this is their background a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like Robbie has a legal background. Yep. So great example with him is he's probably used to dealing with a very interesting type of clientele. And he's used to probably dealing with some very intense people, intense moments and intense people. I think that translates beautifully into real estate as well. Mm-hmm. Like for me, I started all my original training for real estate comes from commercial. Very intense, very corporate, very similar to finance. Like when I started, no facial hair, tie every day, suit every day. Come in without it, you're probably going to get sent home, if not fired. Unspoken rules. Well, obviously wasn't in a handbook, but the level of professionalism there, I took that and applied it to residential. Because I laugh all the time. When I was at Cushman, I used to joke about residential brokers all the time. I used to be like, oh, they're all idiots. They don't know what they're doing. Shitty career. And I like to laugh. You talk about fate and, self-humbling. Here I am.
There you are.
I love my job. Yeah. I love what I do. But I was one of those guys. I was like, these people are idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. But to kind of combat that internally, I said, let me take the level of professionalism, organization, and structure that you'd have at Cushman and Wakefield. Now let me apply that in a residential brokerage. Rather than just shooting off the hip and winging things, having no plan, let's have quarterly goals. Let's have quarterly systems. Let's have tiered structures. Everyone has individual roles. What are our end goals? What are our team goals? Looking at your team as a small company. I think all those things they all come back to what your root is, which is what allows you to handle clientele.
Which is why probably a lot of the clients think you're older. And
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it comes across as okay, he knows what he's doing.
Exactly.
The actual business. Yeah. Taking it seriously.
I would like to think so, but yeah, I think I've had people voice that to me. Because listen, I also know and see a lot of, I wouldn't even just say young brokers, but also just juvenile as far as experienced brokers. There are plenty of brokers that are only a few years in and they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s. because it's more of like a second career to them.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of missing elements that I think you really need to service these clients. And I think some people who come from very successful other careers or have good connections, they think you can just show up, know the right people, and you're going to get it done. And that might work. You might hit a couple big ones, and you might, listen, one or two of the right people, you could do quick 50 million. Do a $20 million sale, do a $30 million deal. Great. Congrats. How consistent is that?
Yeah.
Because what I think the end goal for really high level brokers and great teams is year after year after year. Good market, bad market, it does not matter, because we always fall to the level of our systems. And if our systems are constantly prospecting, constantly creating new client relationships, constantly scaling renters into sellers and buyers, we will always have opportunity. And opportunity, I think, is the thing that most people seek in this business, besides money.
Really quickly, before we get back into the episode, did you know that email beats the ROI of social media 40-1? If you want to turn your email list into more listing appointments, then you need to check out Ella. Ella is the only email marketing agency for real estate agents. We help you build a hyper-local email newsletter. We also send conversation starter emails, and we do way more. So you can turn your email into a profitable marketing channel this year. Click the link below, check it out. Hope to see you in there. Let's get back to the episode. Did you have to learn anything about like being more systems oriented and versus just kind of always trying to do the next thing, having a system behind it all?
Yes, I think it became, as my business started to grow, because when I first came out here, like I mentioned to you, I think before we started filming, I never planned on doing this for more than a few months, which internally allowed me to be very aggressive, because I was like, I don't care how many feathers I ruffle. I'm not going to be here in 3 months. Let me just go after everything. Let me be super aggressive. It was a very freeing experience almost, because, I don't know if you've ever done something where it's like when I don't know if you've ever gone and lived in a place where you knew you were only going to live there for a few months.
Not personally, no.
Well, I did that for a little while too, but it's like if you do something where you're only going to be in a place for a week, you go on vacation. I'm like, what? I'll dance like a fool in front of it. I don't care. Yeah. I'll do it because I'm never going to see these people again. That was my mentality when I started out here. So I was like, none of these people know who I am. I'm going to be gone in 1 to 2 business quarters, and I have nothing to lose. So when I first came out here, I was kind of just like, let me just call as many people as possible. Let me just try and take on any single lead possible. Bad, good, ugly, great. I'll take it and we'll run with it. If it doesn't work, I don't care. That just started to quickly snowball into a lot of business. And then I realized that because I only thought short term, I hadn't established systems in the beginning. So I basically had to hit pause, and I was like, okay, this is getting serious. I really enjoy this. The money's great. Let me back up and let me actually go back to my old notes. How did I organize things at Cushman? What were the tiers? So it really was just a more out of necessity thing. Mm-hmm. I'm almost like ashamed to say I really haven't done many major structural things just out of desire. I've pretty much done all of them out of necessity. The only thing I did that I really wanted to, not because I had to, was I got an assistant. Because I just felt like that would really help free up things. I didn't need to when I did it. But if I lost her now, I would need another one. I can tell you that. That was the one thing I did that I didn't have to do at the time. But talking to brokers that had teams for 20 years of people that were doing, 5, 10, 15 million in GCI, they were like, you need to get an assistant if you want to take it to the next level.
Executive assistant?
Yeah.
Nice.
Because I'm also a very big believer in, finding great mentors.
Yep.
Like Ryan's been an incredible mentor for me. I say to people all the time, the best blessing I've ever had is that I've had phenomenal coaches and phenomenal mentors my entire life. My first boss when I was interning in college was amazing. My first boss when I was interning at Cushman was amazing. My first boss at Cushman was incredible. The junior or the mid-level people I worked under were such great mentors. They treated me like family. When I went out to the Hamptons, I had awesome mentors. Like I've always had people that I felt genuinely cared about me, which is why as a team leader, I genuinely invest in the people that work with me. And that's why as a broker, I genuinely care about the results for my clients. I try to avoid just looking at everybody as a number because, to a certain extent, I think it just becomes immoral.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of brokers who are like, you can't do it that way. You're just going to get burned out doing it like that. I'm sorry, I got a little off route for what you initially asked. But
so like what have you kind of taken away from working with like Ryan really closely? Like what are some big things that have changed for you?
I think big things that have changed for me. One was my outlook on like the scalability of the space. I always felt like it was an industry that was relatively capped. And then after talking to him and the way he looks at it, because he didn't look at his team business as just like team real estate. He literally looked at his team as a company before it was a company. And he had departments. He had, goals, handbooks. If you look at his old team stuff, it literally just looked like a small company, not even just a brokerage, just a small firm. Like you would show up, you have onboarding steps, you had handbooks, guidelines. And I was like, this is what elite level brokerage looks like, or brokering looks like. He didn't just treat it like just a brokerage. He treated it like a firm inside of a firm, which is, I think, what made it so. I mean, I think his team at one point was like 45 people. As a luxury real estate team, that's insane.
Yeah.
If you're selling, if you're a small brokerage or a boutique brokerage with a team and you have 30 brokers and the average price is, 300 to 600,000. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. You need a ton of volume. Their average sale was probably 6-7 million, and this guy had 45 people working with him. It's incredible to me. So it was his approach to his team structure, and then also just his time blocking. I thought I was efficient with my time until I started spending a lot of time with him, and I was like, oh my God. He would show me his calendar, and his whole life is broken into 15-minute increments, if not less.
Crazy, yeah.
But that's what allows him to do. You see a lot of these podcast formats online, and you hear a lot of these guys, and they say these like really corny lines, like, "Well, I convert one day into 4 days. Like each day is 3 hours." I'm like, all right, well, it's a bit much. For him, he doesn't say anything like that, but he's like, this is how I can service 9 states, a whole company, still be a broker, still be a reachable leader. Like he doesn't waste meeting time. And I think one thing that it's easy to fall into as brokers is it's really easy for a lunch to turn into an hour lunch, to turn into a 2.5 hour lunch.
Yeah.
And it comes down to what your goals are. Do you want to be a guy that sits down and a lunch turns into a 3-hour lunch where 80% of it is nonsense? Yeah, you'll build great rapport, but I'm sure you could build great rapport in that 1 hour. And that's something I really learned from him is, really time blocking to more narrow blocks. It was one, looking at how he structured his team, I changed. I didn't change necessarily, but I really improved. Like I created my own handbook. I created all my own documentation for my team. So like if you join my team, like you have from month 1 to month 12, I have exactly what you're going to be doing.
So someone as like busy as you, people from the outside would be like, how do you even have time to like create that handbook?
It took a long time, to be completely honest with you. And what ends up happening is you use your personal time for it. So time where, you're like unwinding, if you will. That was the time where I would do futures stuff that wasn't going to have an immediate impact, might not help the people that I already had trained on the team. But I knew down the road, this was going to save me tens, if not hundreds of hours. And that's something I think is really easy to lose sight of. And I think one thing I think is amazing that what you're doing, this model, from what my very small understanding of it, you really have to, the commitment to it early on is a lot. But once it clicks, it explodes.
Yeah.
And that's the same way that I looked at, getting all this stuff in order for the team structure. It wasn't stuff that was going to make us a lot of money year one. I knew that. The team knew that. My real estate coach knew that. My manager knew that. Ryan knew that. But it was stuff that 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road, I knew was going to pay us immense dividends because it was going to allow us structure, scalability, more than anything, buying us time back. Because kind of like what Robbie said, The best teams do a lot of business. A lot of business usually means a lot of clients. So the thing we're always fighting is the clock. I used to laugh because when I was young, I felt like the days were endless. And now I feel like I look up and it's 8:45 at night.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I have to eat.
There's still an endless list of stuff
I
to
have
do.
200 emails I have to get through, and it's a blessing. It's the best. It's a blessing to be busy, is what I like to say.
Yep.
But the thing we're always trying to do is buy more time back. And I think when you put these things in place, this organization, the structure, setting expectations within your own team, that helps everybody get more time back. And we're at a place now where, like with my team, the team structure is a lot on like my front, a lot of it is networking and business development. So my focus is building new rapport or new relationships, bringing us new listings, new business, new buyers, and doing a lot of, I travel a lot, which for a very local real estate broker probably doesn't make a ton of sense objectively speaking. But I go to like a lot of our major markets that we're in, establish relationships, get to know everybody. Because anybody, even like in Arizona now.
Yeah.
We just launched in Arizona. I went to that office launch. They have a ton of clients that have a ton of property in the Hamptons. Big golf community in Arizona now. Florida, I'm really close with all our brokers in Florida.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
That's a great feeder market for us. I always say we're the gluttonous side of referrals because we're not really a market that refers out a ton. I would say for every 10 referrals we get in, we might refer one out. And it's not for lack of trying. I can promise you that. It's a lot of it is just, we're usually the second stop, the third stop.
Yeah, it's not
the
like
10th
primary.
stop for somebody's real estate journey. Whereas like Florida and Manhattan, they're always feeding.
Yeah, there's transient people moving in and
Oh
out.
my
So
God,
yeah,
that's insane.
So I think one of the underrated things that you kind of talked about earlier was switching like your sleep schedule, like you're working out. I think it's not really talked about. I don't know if you know like Brian Johnson, but he just
Name sounds really familiar.
He like sold his company to Venmo, and then he got into like health, and his number one thing is like sleep. Is like
yes, okay, I know exactly who he is. Yeah.
And basically, if you don't take care of yourself, you're more likely to like react. You're not gonna, because you're not taking care of yourself. And I think the big difference of like people at a high level is like you just make time for the things that matter, like health, sleep.
Yeah.
Was that like hard to do at the beginning?
Absolutely. The first year, so I've always been like very into physical exercise. It's like, for me, it's like what I find like very mentally calming. And the first year that I was out east, I basically went to the gym like 15 times. Because I was constantly like, anytime something came up, I was like, all right, well, I'll just give up the personal stuff. I'll skip the family events. I'll go to bed late. I'll skip the gym. But to your point, I think sleep's the biggest. For me, sleep is what keeps me sharp.
Yeah.
Exercise is what keeps me calm. And so I think it's person to person. Like my best friend from Dartmouth, the guy literally sleeps like 5 hours, and he's fine. He's a machine. He's a chemical engineer, biochemical engineer. And he never needed to sleep a lot. I think most people need like 7 or 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
And it's funny because most of my friends work in high level finance, and it's this weird, I don't know if it's a generational thing or just a New York City thing. It's probably just a New York thing, which is like people almost like to brag about how poorly they take care of their health and themselves.
Yeah.
Like, I've been working 18 hours a day. What? What? Are you sleeping? Yeah, I'm only sleeping like 4 hours a night. Okay. You realize there are tremendous health impacts from that, right?
Yeah.
And you're probably working incredibly inefficiently because you're dragging. And I get it. Like, listen, do you go into banking? You signed up for that. I get it.
Yeah.
Totally get it. But to your point in the beginning, I wasn't doing it. And then I started to notice it had negative impacts on my performance at work. So that's when this all kind of comes back to the time blocking stuff. Literally having like a shut off time. Unless there's something that just has to be done, in which case I'll never skip that. Like, it has to be addressed. But in like my day-to-day, like on a normal day, having actual cutoff times, and what ended up having to get sacrificed, which as a big movie lover, was for me was any like basically TV. You basically have to give up. You don't have to, but
it helps.
It helps a lot. I think so many people waste so much time. That and then
the phone,
the phones. And that's why I think social media is so interesting to me. Like I have this weird relationship with social media where like I probably look at it too much, but I also like don't do enough of it or with it on my own end. And I think it's such a great tool, but I never, up until very recently, which is so ironic how when we got connected, I very recently decided like, okay, I'm going to start putting some serious effort into, talking to people in different spaces about real estate, marketing side, attorneys, title, kind of like what you're doing, but more so from like a broker perspective, like more from like a teaching base.
Yeah.
And then just like talking more about deal flow that I work on, like just being in front of the camera more, actually sharing what goes on in my life. Because if you look at my Instagram now, it's just nonstop, just pictures of houses, sold, just listed, open house, this, and videos of houses. And that's great. And you can probably attest this better than anybody I know. There's a ton of benefit to like showing the human side of who you are, what you have to offer on people's little phones. Because this is, let's be blunt, most people date through these now more than they do meeting people in person. Mm-hmm. So they're probably going to find their broker that way. If you're going to find the person that you're going to marry, you're probably going to find your broker that way. You're probably going to find your attorney that way. Soon enough, I don't think there's going to be a lot of human initial interaction, if you will. Yeah. As scary as that might sound. But this is like this is the thing that opens the first door.
And coming from someone who like works at Serhant with someone who is like huge, for example, on YouTube, yeah. Ryan, like he didn't like push or say like marketing.
Our last annual meeting, I'm very lucky to have a boss who cares enough to sit down and meet with me. He basically was like, "You're doing everything great. You suck at social media," and I was like, "Okay." And he's like, and he goes, for someone in their 20s, he's like, that's unacceptable. He's like, what? He's like, what's your problem with it? And it was a great question. And he said, he's like, is it like an internal thing? Like, do you not like the way you look or sound or feel on camera? Or is it just you don't see the value in it? And I think it was a mix of a handful of things. Like, one, I've never been someone that like jumps in front of a camera. That's just not who I am.
Same. That's what I do, like this.
Yeah, no, it's great. And it's like, for me, I think that's going to be a learned skill. I never really allocated the time or the energy to like prepping for it. I think now with some new, with how AI is developed, I think prepping for these things has become a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. And then I just never had like an editing background. And he shot all those things right down. He was like, okay, he's like, well, start getting in front of a camera. He's like, our company has a massive marketing department, so anything you film can just be edited. And he was like, and make the time. He's like, put it on your calendar. And I was like, okay. And, the shame of it is that was months ago. My problem has always been I kind of hyper-focus on the business, mm-hmm. and I don't hyper-focus on marketing. Mm. And I'm sure you talk to a lot of brokers. I saw on your page, I don't know if they're only brokers, but who talk relentlessly about marketing. Like, that's all they talk about. And here I am, and I'm very proud of how our business is scaled. I think we have a ways to go to get it to where I'd be actually happy with it. And the one thing that would help it get there is the one thing I probably need to put more energy into.
But it's also a good thing to like have the sales side, because a lot of people do like the social media, the marketing, but they don't have like the sales and the business side too.
So what you just said, I talk about a lot. I personally, and this is just a me thing, have a huge issue with people who have no transactional experience, who just start going crazy on marketing.
Giving advice on how to be an agent.
Talking about things they don't know anything about, blatantly lying about their day-to-day and what they're doing. And it's probably just a me thing, because like internally I'm like, that's just disingenuous. But at the same time, I'm like, you eventually you're going to get leads from that, but you haven't put the time in to learn, get the experience. So I guess, but I guess it's what comes first, chicken or the egg. A lot of people I'd rather just get the business and figure it out on the fly. Whereas I'm in the latter camp of I would rather have a ton of experience. And then when I get onto this stage of the business, people can come to me and I'm like, listen, here's my whole track record. Like, this is my history. Here are my listings. You want to talk to some of my clients? I have sales from 1 million to 35, whoever you want to talk to. Because I've stayed in touch with all my clients. Like, I like that model. Yeah. But to your point, what I really need to do is like Ryan said, is put it on my calendar and actually do it.
So what is his advice of like, hey, do this type of video? You might be more natural if you do this. Like, did he kind of like give any strategy or direction?
Not specifically. Something that he likes is he loves like this format. He thinks it's great. And as you can see on social media, it's doing very well.
Yeah.
I personally love this format. Like, I think this format's great because I find this more informative.
Yeah.
But I'm always somebody, like, if I'm on social, I'm looking for knowledge. That's like my favorite thing. I'm not, I love a good funny video and I'm a huge sports fan. But anything real estate based, like, I love this, which is ironic because I don't do it often. But it's my favorite thing to watch on social media. Like, if you look at my Instagram, if you took my Instagram and put it under your name as a broker, I would hate it. Because I don't like to just look at houses. I like to hear, what's your approach to business? What do you think is a value pro, value con? What are your skills? Like, I love that stuff. And to him, he like this format, his thing is just being in front of using your power of voice, power of face, rather than just a ton of pictures and just like sharing, listen, like, I am very intertwined with the Hamptons community. Like, I'm a board member on the Southampton Animal Shelter now. I'm actually like starting up a lacrosse club that's going to be part of the Hamptons. And like sharing, people want to see that you are full time, like you are the market. The best restaurants, the side roads, those, like, people love those little, like, being someone who can offer those like little secrets. People love that. And when you're a broker, yes, your goal and your purpose is real estate. But I think you've probably seen this many times. A lot of times you end up also becoming kind of like their regional confidant. Like, hey, who's a good person? Where should I take my kids for camp? Oh, great. We'll go to Hayground in Bridgehampton. Where's a great place to rent surfboards? Oh, just literally go to Montauk, anywhere in Montauk. And it becomes, you don't just become the real estate guy, you become the regional go-to.
Like the local expert.
Yeah. Exactly. Which I think adds a lot of value.
So would you go about it, like, because I talked to Ravi and he's like, yeah, I might do like a podcast format where I'm like talking to other kind of like business leaders, talking a little more broad scope outside of real estate and then bring it in. I don't know if you like thought through what you might want to do.
I actually, very similar to him, I think, and this is where you come, you're like, how many people are going to do this?
Yeah.
My goal was to do a mix of people, what I call business alliance, which is not brokers. I mean, I'd be happy to talk to other brokers, but it's like, who wants to watch two people mirror themselves?
Yeah.
But like talking to people who are involved in transactional aspects of the business. I also like talking to town officials. I think would be amazing. What a great way to spread information, like local law, local code changes, things that I personally think a lot of brokers don't know about, which they really should be, is up to date on local code. Proper zoning, like what can and can't actually be done. What is changing? East Hampton just changed their mansion restrictions. So like you can no longer go over 10,000 square feet. So if you have a waterfront that's 20,000 square feet or 15,000 square feet, congratulations, that just became worth a lot more. And there are brokers that don't know that. And that was a really big thing. I don't know how, but they don't. So like talking to those people and then talking to local restaurant owners, local business owners. Yeah. And then scaling it out, like New York City, Florida.
Yeah, because I
think it's great.
You could go into like other markets like New York City, Miami, and bridge those connections to the Hamptons too. I
think it would be great. And especially in my market, like Ryan's big thing that he always wants me to do, which he has me do a lot, is going to other markets. Basically like being the bridge. is kind of like, he didn't explicitly say that, but that's basically what it is. Be the guy who connects the markets. So, I'm a local Hamptons broker, but the last 6 months I've been in a different city every month. And if you look at somebody who works in a market that is this big on the map, you'd be like, why is this guy away for 2 to 4 days every month in a different city? Yeah. And it's because I'm meeting with other brokers, meeting with other attorneys, people who, inevitably they will need that person. And I want to be that person for them. And I also want them to know me. I want them to know, like, oh, if I call Jack, he's a good guy. He's a man of his word. And if we send somebody to him, he's actually going to do what he says he's going to do.
I'm sure that was like kind of like this, like an investment up front, where at the beginning, you traveling didn't really necessarily make sense on paper.
No, it did not. It's so the first 6 months I was with Serhant, before we even had the office, I would come into Manhattan. I would come in once every week. So every Tuesday or every Wednesday, I was in the city. Oh. And it had gotten to a point where people in the city didn't know if I was, because we hadn't opened the Hamptons officially yet. So people were like, are you a Manhattan agent? Are you Long Island? Are you the Hamptons? But it was great for me because I got to a point now, I can name every single person in the city office. We have hundreds of them. And you could show me them on a map, or not a map, on your phone, on a computer, walking down the street. I will know their full name, their main market, because I've built serious relationships with everybody. But it's 3.5 years, 3 years worth of work now. Yeah. But it was so worth it because all those people know if they need something, they know me and they know that I'm going to take care of their business for them. Like my big thing is I always prioritize referred business. If you refer a client to me, they are going to be treated like a $20 million buyer. I don't care what they're doing. If they're renting, buying, selling, whatever price, they're going to be top of mind because it's a double relationship. It's the client and it's the broker. Yeah. And I want to make sure that broker knows
you treat them right,
that I am an extension of you.
Yeah. And
I've had many brokers say to me like that they're appreciative of that because there's nothing worse than referring to an attorney, another broker, anybody, expecting them to be a reflection of you, and they absolutely, they drop the ball. And now that client's looking back at you, and they're like, "You're the reason we worked with this person, and they suck." So to me, that's always been something that's really, really important to me. Is I want to make sure that whoever refers to me knows that their person is going to get the best. Not only the best service, but the best results possible.
So I used to think growing on YouTube is hard until I learned the game of YouTube. Now we manage over 30 of the top real estate channels from 0 to 50,000 subscribers, and they each generate over $250,000 in extra GCI every single year. And here's the one thing that I learned. YouTube is not a video quality game, it's a packaging game, meaning it's all about the topics and how you package them. That's why we send the top 10 highest performing outlier videos every single week in our newsletter. We track over 150 of the top real estate channels across the country and way more outside the industry to give you the 10 highest performing outlier videos every single week to inspire your next video. So if you want 10 free ideas every single week sent to your inbox, click the link in the description below and join the Breaking and Building Leaders newsletter and join over 7,000 agents who get the 10 best outlier videos sent directly to their inbox every single week to inspire their next video. Join the newsletter today. It's completely for free.
To do what you do in a vacation market, going into other markets, you're building all this relationship capital. And one of the things, like everyone says, my business is a relationship business. Like every agent will tell you like they're good with relationships, but it's usually not like the big things. It's like the small things. What have you learned about how to like actually build relationships, or what do you think most people get wrong?
I think a lot of people go a mile wide and an inch deep. So I think a lot of people misunderstand the relationship aspect, and what they do is they just try and meet 150 people and then they just meet them, tell them their name, maybe shoot them a follow-up message. but they never take the relationship deeper. So my biggest thing is like, I have at this point in time, I have a very large web of relationships that was built over time. But in the beginning, I would meet a person, get to know them, learn a little bit about them, and think if there was something worthwhile, lunch, dinner, keeping up with one another, following what they're doing, like actually getting to know them as an individual. I don't care if they're a broker, builder, like getting to actually know them to an extent where they say, oh, could you talk about a little bit about who Jack is as a man? Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've talked to Jack several times. We were talking about, oh yeah, he's a nice guy, great guy. Oh yeah, he was telling me about this. Like being someone who's also a value add to them. Like, oh yeah, Jack actually told me about this. He gave me a heads up on this. I think a lot of people, especially on the broker side, they just meet a ton of people and they never do anything with those relationships. Like I think a good web for most brokers, especially like junior people, get a good 10 to 20 people. Get a good 10 to 20 people in different aspects of the business. Get a good CPA, get a good real estate attorney, get a good title person, get a good mortgage broker. Create your own web. Don't just go to the biggest fish too. I think a lot of people are like, oh, let me go to the best mortgage broker in the state. That, yes, great. And they're always going to deliver. You are never going to reap any benefits from that person because they're also the go-to broker for the top 50 real estate brokers in the state of New York. So like building people who you can actually go back and forth with. That's the other thing that I tell my team. Don't just build relationships with people that I'm already super close with. Build your own web. That's how we really cover a lot of ground.
Yeah.
I call it like territory. So each of us should have our own, like the wolf pack mentality. Each of us should have our own territories, but instead of them being borders, we just intertwine them all. But yeah, usually I think the goal is like get 10 to 20 people and build real relationships with them. And also make sure, reading the room, making sure you're building rapport with the right people. Don't just find, the funniest person or the prettiest person. Find the people that their business aligns with you. You align with your values, your outlook on the space, and that your businesses are actually going to be reciprocated. That was the biggest thing I noticed early on with some other people that started around the same time as me is they were building relationships and they were just never going anywhere with it. Like they would meet somebody, give them their business card, and be like, oh yeah, I met 3 people at the event. Did you really? Or did you like shake 3 people's hands?
Shake 3 people's hands.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to get anything from that. Maybe you will if you really said something incredible that blew their mind. But I bet if you went to lunch with all 3 of those people, just be a connector. People love people that are connectors.
Yeah.
So if you're someone, like let's say next week you guys were still here and I was like, hey, I want to introduce you to a couple of people, go to dinner, meet me for dinner in Manhattan. And I introduce you to 2 people that you ended up bringing on. One guy's the reason you blow up. You're going to remember that dinner probably forever. And that being a connector is a huge thing.
Oh yeah.
That's a huge, huge thing that I think not enough people do, but the best people always do.
Yeah.
Ryan is a phenomenal connector. That guy has bridged probably more relationships that became transactions than I don't even think he's aware of because he's done it so much.
Yeah.
But I've noticed the best mortgage brokers do that. The best attorneys do that. They're really good at being like, hey, you know who I think you would love and who would really benefit is Jack, if you met this Mason. And you're like, why do I want to meet a Mason? You're like, well, he's got a ton of clients and I don't know if he's got a broker that he's really close with. Then you bridge that. And then if him and I link, I always remember those introductions too. And that's how you create the real strong, like to me I would actually say that's the primary is once you establish your core of like 10 to 20, then being a connector. Because if people associate you with somebody that knows people, you're always going to be, you're going to be first to call always. Because they're always going to be like, oh, yeah.
He knows the guy.
He'll definitely know someone.
Yeah.
Let's give him a call. And I always want to be that middle person. I want to be a life broker. Let me just broker anything because let me just have my hand in the pie. And it's not even always because you're asking for something from it. It helps you be knowledgeable. And the brokers that I've always really admired, they're just always in the know. Oh, they always know. And I love. Like there's nothing I respect more than somebody that just always knows.
Yeah,
like, hey, did you hear about that? Yeah, I did. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Do you know how that started? I'm like, how the heck? I'm like, this guy's incredible. Like, he is so in tune. And those people are always like, they're the guys, or they're the men or the women that are connecting so many of these people. So everything always comes back to them.
Yeah.
You make yourself especially in like a local market like the Hamptons, you become a very powerful person once you start being someone that people are running things through. It's great.
Yeah. I think that's huge, being a connector.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to follow you, kind of see what you're up to, where should they go?
Instagram is Jack Richardson _RE.
Nice.
Yeah.
Looking back at your lacrosse, you kind of mentioned your parents a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, like, entrepreneurship is a lot of highs and lows, and returning back to baseline. Was there a moment like earlier in your life that kind of shaped who you are today?
Yeah, there have been a few. I think for me, things that I always come back to, I had a great upbringing. Great. My parents were incredible. My sisters were incredible. But my parents, they had a lot of up and downs as far as like job wise. And I think one thing I saw it when I was a bit older. I think it was Jim Carrey when he was. I don't know if you ever saw this. He was giving a graduation speech, and he talks about how his father worked in a job that he didn't like, over chasing his dreams, and he ended up getting fired from that job that he hated anyway. And there was a time in my life where my dad had gotten laid off, and I watched that struggle for my parents. And I don't think my dad loved that job at any point either. And thank God he ended up in a position where he was in a much better spot now. But I remember when I was young watching them go through that struggle. And there was something, I don't think I ever openly like looked in the mirror and I was like, you're going to be an entrepreneur. You're going to be someone that leads a business. It was more so, you're going to be someone that always finds a way, because that's what your roots are. You have two parents that always find a way. And I think when I started looking into what career paths I wanted to go into while I was not growing up, but while I was going through college, when you go to Dartmouth, to be honest with you, you have like 3 jobs they'll talk to you about. As long as you don't want to do med school or law school, so let's get those out of the way. Do you want to go into banking? Do you want to go into PE? Or do you want to go into consulting? Those are basically the only 3 jobs they ever talk to you about. And there's a reason for that. They're incredible jobs, and they're really safe jobs. But when I started looking into internships and doing some research and studying, I was like, I like to talk to people. I like to have every day look a little different. And I think the monotonous nature of those jobs, I found very, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but not intriguing.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate. I met someone, one of my best friends from college. His father was a great mentor for me. He was very, very successful in commercial real estate. And he's the one that really started to get me into real estate. He actually approached me. I was interning in San Francisco. I was working at a student loan reimbursement startup company just as an internship. And he called me. He's like, "What do you want to do for work?" And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm really struggling. I don't know. I'm like, because I think I'm just going to go into banking, but I genuinely know I'm going to hate every day. And I know that not every job's a guarantee. And I really don't want to work in a job that I hate every day. And also kind of going back to like my roots, I had a lot of people who I loved pass away really young. So for me, I've always been like a every day is a gift kind of guy. So, I think there's a balance between doing what you have to do, but also not doing things you hate.
Yeah.
So that always was kind of in the back of my mind when I was looking at like what career paths I wanted to go into. And when he called me, it was he kind of called me out of the blue, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" He's like, I think you should go into real estate." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "What can you?" I always loved the tangibility of real estate. My mother works at an engineering firm. My father worked in construction, so it was always something that was kind of prevalent around the house.
Yeah.
And I loved, like I said, the tangibility. Like, I love that you can see it. I love that you can touch it, feel it, watch it come to life. To me, the most beautiful thing about our job is watching a patch of dirt turn into a beautiful home or this large scale building. I think that's the most incredible thing. and how many hands have to go into creating that.
Yeah.
Whereas like on the finance side, a lot of spreadsheets. I like to joke that, I just think PE and banking is just a lot of people making up numbers and then selling it to somebody else for more money, which it is. And thank God it's very profitable because all my clients do it. So when he brought up the real estate side to me, I was like, yeah, I think that sounds great. And I was like, what do you think are the strengths and weaknesses of it? He's like, you need to be tenacious. He's like, because everybody's trying to rip your head off every day. He's like, so you need to be a competitor. And I was like, okay, love competition. He was like, it's a self-starter job. He's like, if you want to suck, then suck. He's like, if you want to be great, then you chase it every day. And I was like, I like this. This sounds great. Like, I loved the fact that the motivational tool of real estate is that if you don't do it, you fail. Yeah. You're guaranteed to fail if you don't do it. But there is no ceiling. And to me, chasing the impossible is like a drug. It's addictive. Like, you're always chasing more because there always is more. And that's like sometimes, like my family or loved ones will say to me, like, why do you feel like you're caught up on work? And I'm like, you're never really caught up. Yeah. Because there's always more you could be doing. So you're never really caught up. But I like that. Like, it keeps me going. Yeah, I think for me, I think that's like a lot of the root of it is, I think I saw my parents struggle doing stuff they didn't necessarily love. And I decided I'm not going to do something I don't love, or at least something I don't like. I don't need to love it, but I need to somewhat enjoy it. I'm very fortunate I ended up just falling into a job I love. Yeah. And then just some really, really great advice and some really unique opportunities, If COVID never happens, I'm still working at Cushman & Wakefield on 51st and 6th. I might be interested in getting a place inevitably in the Hamptons, but I'm certainly not there 24/7, living in a place where people dream of vacationing.
Now you live there every day.
Yeah, now I'm there every day. So it is interesting how people, throw, or how kind of life throws curveballs at you. But it's, I don't know, it's also, kind of, I guess you didn't ask this, but as a spin-off to your question, there's that entrepreneurial side of it, but with that comes a lot of doubt. And I think something that I really struggled with, like, early on was, again, like I said to you, when you go to Dartmouth, there are expectations of career paths you're going to go into when you graduate from an Ivy League school. And being a residential real estate agent is not one of them. So there's that doubt that really creeps in the back of your mind. It's like, what's the safe route? The safe route is you go into banking, you hate your life for 5 to 15 years, and you are guaranteed to be rich for the rest of it. And then on my side, I'm like, okay, well, I don't really want to hate my life for 5 to 15 years, or be at least, maybe not hate it, but just be pretty beat up. But this job has so much volatility and no guarantee. Yeah. Like, who's looking out for me? And it's this back and forth you have. And I'm a very competitive person, sometimes to a poor extent, where it becomes like the comparison game, where you're like, okay, what are your peers who went into finance doing? Yeah. Okay, oh, they're scaling. Oh, they're on the MD track. Okay, that's going to be good. It's going to be really safe money. It's going to be a great life. Or, and then I'm looking at myself, I'm like, okay, well, people are complaining the rates are high. We're running out of land. And then you just have to take those moments where you sit back and you go, okay, remind yourself why you're doing it. You love the job. Remind yourself what your goal is. You want to scale to X level. When you get to the top, it's not if, it's when. And like constantly manifesting that style. And then it's reminding yourself what got you into it in the first place, why you didn't go that route. For me, that was a huge hurdle for me. I don't know if a lot of people in my industry deal with it, but because I'm the only one of my peers that is in this space, they're all basically living the same life. If that makes sense. Yeah, they're all doing the same thing in different ways. And then my life is totally different. But I'm very fortunate, got a lot of momentum, business scaled really quickly. So it was a lot easier. I think if I was struggling, it would be easier to have that doubt. That doubt
come back.
It's a lot easier to not have doubt when you're like, oh, things are scaling exactly how we wanted them to. We wish it would be faster. It's a lot easier to be like, oh, you made the right decision. But that was another challenge on the flip side of it, is like then that other conversation where, that quote I brought up is like, well, you can fail doing what you hate, but you can also fail doing what you love. So it's that like little stressor. But for me, I don't know. Those things keep me going. You know, it's a little bit of anxiety that keeps you up at night that just also makes sure you're firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that. Was there any sort of moment maybe that you were like what if it didn't work, and like how you would look if it didn't work? Or
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's something I'm very fortunate. I don't really think about it as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a time where I would literally lay in bed. I would get ready to go to bed, and I would lay there and I would run through all the numbers, like all the deals, all the numbers that I have turned in my head. And then there was one, I want to say it was 2022. It might have been 23, where there was that big, there was a week where there was a big crypto crash. And this has happened multiple times, but it was one of those weeks.
Yeah.
And I think I had like $22 million worth of deals fall through in 48 hours. And, you know, an average of, whatever, 20 million at, 2.5%. It was like $400,000, $500,000 worth of commission just gone in like 48 hours. And I'll never forget that night laying in bed. And I was just like, oh my God. I'm like, if this just keeps happening, I'm going to look like a fool. I'm going to look like an idiot, because everyone else is on this path where it's just a very slow, gradual, their little exponential jump ups. So they're 100% were those moments where I would just be there and I'm like, this only looks good if you crush it. Like this only works if you make it to the top. There is no other option. Otherwise you look like you made a dumb decision. And nobody wants to look dumb, but also you don't want to be a person that like values and bases all your decisions off of, the opinions of others. It's a very fine line in that regard too. But I think it's very real and it's very human.
And now you've made it on the other side of that, so.
Yeah, now I feel like I've made it on the other side of that. So now we just got to keep going.
Just keep growing.
Now we just need to win. Now we just need to make it to the top. Yeah.